Okay, welcome back to some more fun with math. In this video, I'm going to talk about some special properties of real numbers and then how we are able to label different equations with those properties. So the first thing that I wanted to look at is where a lot of students struggle, which is knowing what the different properties look like and how they work. So we have kind of like a list here. First and foremost, we have what's called the commutative property, and we have one for addition and we have it for multiplication. Well, in a nutshell, essentially what we are talking about is if we have two numbers or variables, a plus b, on one side of the equation, this property states that it has to be the same, b plus a, on the other side of the equation. Meaning it doesn't matter. You can add a plus b or b plus a and you're going to get the same answer. That same holds true for the multiplication portion. If you have ab, well, this property states that that should be the same as ba. The associative property says that if I introduce a third, then going through a parentheses, you could be the same. In other words, if I have for addition a plus b, and then I add a c to it, well, this would give me the exact same answer if I had done a plus, and then in parentheses, b plus c. Okay, it should be the same either way. Multiplication is written as if I did a times BC, this would give me the same as AB times C. Okay. The distributive property says if I start out by having some constant on the outside and I have some B plus C on the inside, the distributive property says you have to take this A term and you are distributing it through your parentheses. So in other words, you're going to distribute it onto the B and you're going to distribute it onto the C, thus making this AB plus AC. Okay, that is the distributive property. Well, that being said, we can also start from the expanded form and go backwards. And when we do that, this is that we are pulling out a common factor. Okay, so basically reverse distributing. Now the identity property is when we are talking about whatever you start with getting back its original. So in other words, if I take some number or letter and add 0 to it, well, that would be the same thing as taking 0 and adding that number or letter to it. In other words, whatever I started with is what I end with. In multiplication, however, my identity has to be multiplying by 1. Well, if we take some random number or letter and multiply by 1, that's going to give us the same as if I had taken 1 times that random number or letter, which essentially means I start out with what, or I end with what I started with. The inverse property deals with a negative. So if I start with a positive and I add it to its negative self, I get 0 as a result. In terms of multiplication, if we start with some random number, then the inverse property says you're going to multiply by the reciprocal of that number, which gives you what you started with. And here we're looking at that a can't be 0. Okay. The zero factor property says that if a times b equals 0, then either A was 0 or B was 0. Okay? So these are all of the different properties that we have to work with. So one thing that a lot of students seem to struggle with is being able to take an equation and use a property definition in order to just simply state what the property would look like. So for example, I have 16 plus 9 plus 11, and here all I want to do is complete the mathematical sentence using the given property. This property here that I want to use is the associative property. Associative property says if I'm adding the 16 on the outside and then 9 plus 11 inside, that should give me the exact same as if I did 16 plus 9 plus 11. So this is the associative property. The zero factor property says if I have some a, b, and it equals 0, then either a or b was 0. Therefore, the zero factor property says that this result is 0. Here I have 9 times 5, and I want to use the commutative property for multiplication. That essentially says 9 times 5 is the same as 5 times 9. Here I have 2x minus 12, and I want to use the distributive property. That says I have to distribute the 2 through the parentheses. This becomes 2x minus 24 is the distributive property. Now, when we are looking at these, notice the only thing that we're supposed to do here is state the property shown. We're not asking to solve or simplify. We're asking to identify the property you see. So here, I have negative 4 plus 16 equals 16 plus negative 4. So when we're looking at that, this is going to be the commutative property of addition. In the second one, I have a 5n times, and that's negative 3 times negative 6, and that is the same as 5n times negative 3 and the whole thing times negative 6. This is called the associative property of multiplication. Okay, so notice in both of these, neither one of them did I try and simplify down or solve. I just simply am stating the property that you are seeing. Here I have 15 times 1 gives me 15, so this is called the identity of multiplication. This next one here says 2 times x plus 6 equals 2x plus 12. So this is an example of distributive. And last I have 9 plus a negative 9 equals 0. So this is the inverse property of addition. And so that is everything you need to know in a nutshell about the different properties as it relates to properties of real numbers. Now you need to make sure that you are familiar with these different properties, as they will help you when you are trying to simplify or solve linear equations down the line. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, remember to just keep smiling, ask tons of questions, have lots of fun with your math, relax, and as always, I'll see you next time.